After months and months of waiting, Busch Gardens Tampa has released the POV to one of the most hyped up roller coasters of all time. Next year, we will be seeing the new world's fastest, tallest, and steepest hybrid coaster, and it will likely be one of the greatest coasters we've seen yet. Exactly how good it'll be, no one is quite sure yet because few people have earned it, but we can guess from the POV, so that's what we'll be doing today. But to get to the point that we are now, a ton of stuff has happened. It all started back in 1995 when Busch Gardens Tampa would close the old Busch Brewery, located right at the front of the park. First opening at the park in 1959, it was a real brewery that also featured some tours, but by 1995 it was the smallest brewery in the Anheuser-Busch company and it was time to close it down. This opened up some prime real estate that would most definitely be filled with something the park could be proud of. 2 years later, in 1997, it was finally time to pick a replacement, but there is no way that this would be an easy decision. Vice President of Park Planning Mark Rose decided to take a 17 amusement park road trip to help research designs and no doubt have some fun along the way. One of the parks was Hershey Park, where he found himself enamored with their brand new one-of-a-kind wooden coaster, Wildcat. Busch Gardens was at the time looking for a way to differentiate themselves and bring in more guests, and there was only one wooden coaster in Florida at the time, Starliner at Miracle Strip. But given that it was almost 6 hours away out in Miami, there was no wooden coaster market in the area. For these reasons, Busch Gardens would consult GCI for their big investment, although this television broadcast claims that it was actually CGI that made it. July 15, 1998 saw vertical construction commence as well as an official announcement for the coaster. It would be touted as the largest wooden coaster in the southeast, in addition to being Florida's first dueling coaster. Well, it was supposed to be. Largely due to GCI's lack of experience at the time, several parts of the coaster had to be redesigned a number of times, pushing the opening date all the way until June 1999. Almost a year after construction had commenced. That meant that before Busch Gardens could open Gwazi, Universal's Islands of Adventure would open on May 28, 1999, with Dueling Dragons, the well-known B&M in Verdue, and the actual first dueling coasters in Florida. But in time, Gwazi would successfully open on June 18, 1999 to mostly positive reviews, praising the ride for its modern design and racing aspect. As time wore on, though, positive reviews would be less and less commonplace as the ride became increasingly rough. The ride would operate year-round in the Florida humidity for 10 years until in 2009 the park decided to do something about it and give a full retrack to the Lion side, with a full retrack coming to Tiger side just 1 year later. And finally, the park would install brand new Millennium Flyer trains, hoping that they might track a bit smoother. These attempts would be to little avail, with the ride having just the same complaints after as it did before. An insanely rough ride with a boring layout, at least compared to newer GCIs. It was clear that Gwazi's days were numbered, and by far the biggest blow came in 2012 when Tigerside was closed indefinitely, losing the one aspect that people liked about Gwazi, the dueling. Lionside would keep trudging on until February 1st, 2015, the last day the half Gwazi would ever operate. That's really when speculation started as to what could possibly replace Gwazi as the centerpiece of the park. The park repeatedly told the press that they had no idea what they were going to do with Gwazi, and given what we know now with it being RMC'd and not torn down, that's probably true. Some people have questioned why Gwazi was not given the RMC treatment sooner, but there's a simple reason why it didn't happen. SeaWorld Entertainment, owner of both Busch Gardens parks, was reeling following the recession, then the successive release of CNN's Blackfish documentary, sparking protests and the boycotting of SeaWorld parks due to animal abuse allegations. But over time, the Blackfish effect would wear off to an extent, and SeaWorld was looking to transition its parks from animal parks with rides to amusement parks with animals. This would be done through roller coasters, and on September 12, 2018, Busch Gardens Tampa announced their 9th roller coaster, a premier ride Skyrock Cartoon named Tigress. But you know what? No one really cared about that, because at the end was a sneak peek of what was to come of the looming Gwazi structure, currently serving as the park's primary eyesore. There weren't many details, but we now knew that would be converted into an RMC hybrid coaster. The official announcement we would then see on September 12, 2019, giving us the official stats, official name, and that spring 2020 opening date that obviously didn't happen. Track work was completed on March 8th and the first train was sent on March 9th. Testing of the coaster went through March 16th, and then we all know what happened. The park shut down due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, and the park did not reopen until June 11th. But Iron Gwazi still couldn't open due to outlying payments of $3.5 million that Busch Gardens had not paid to Rocky Mountain Construction yet, and the fact that they couldn't have a very grand opening in the year 2020 of such a grand ride. But finally, on November 12, 2020, the park released Iron Gwazi's official point of view video, and that's about where we are now on the Iron Gwazi timeline. We have plenty of information but are just dying to ride. We know that the coaster is the second GCI to ever receive the RMC treatment, the first of course being Joker at Six Flags Discovery Kingdom. The designer is the beast himself, Alan Schilke. The ride is 4,075 feet long and making it the 7th longest RMC, 206 feet tall making it tied with Zadra for the tallest RMC, and 76 miles an hour making it the fastest RMC. It features 2 inversions, including a barrel roll down drop dubbed as many as the death roll and a 0G stall. There's also an overbank curve that the park is advertising as an inversion, but it's not an inversion because it doesn't exceed 135 degrees. Iron Gwazi will feature a 95-degree drop, the steepest drop of any RMC. The prime ride time, at least from this POV, is 47 seconds, just about middle of the road for an RMC. It may be the 7th longest RMC track-wise, but the pacing is good enough that the duration isn't that long. Speaking of the layout, let's jump into that. You start with that standard RMC ear ape chain lift. Not much to say here other than you'll get amazing views looking right towards the rest of the park. Then you descend down that drop, and I can confidently say this will be one of the best drops in the world. It'll provide strong ejector airtime and combine it with that hair-raising support beam head chopper. Then you pull up into an outer bank hill that will provide some strong ejector airtime. I don't think that it'll be as good as the one on Steel Vengeance because you don't seem to go over it as fast, but it still might be the best airtime moment on the ride. Also, something to note is that it's hard to tell just how much you turn on that outer bank hill from the POV. If you look at this view that you get from the drop, you can see that the outer bank actually takes a complete 180. This will be followed by some more mental head choppers, arguably just as good as the one on the drop. Next you go to a turn before being absolutely whipped down to the ground in a death roll. This just comes out of nowhere, and even though when you're right in front of it, you don't see it coming. Next you have the overbank curve, and even though it doesn't fully invert, you're still sure to get some awesome sideways hang time. It almost looks like the train for a second is moving in slow motion before picking back up all of its speed. Then you come to a strong moment of lateral ejector airtime. If you want a comparison, it's similar to the wave turn on Twisted Cyclone, but on a much larger scale, and probably even better. Overall though, airtime really isn't the focus of Iron Gwazi, so those comparisons to Steel Vengeance it's getting, other than a few elements, don't really mean a whole lot. Steel Vengeance is mostly about giving you your 27 seconds of airtime, while Iron Gwazi kinda equally distributes its forces/sensations. There's some hang time, positive Gs, airtime, and laterals. It really just comes down to what you like. Back to the layout, you end the ride with a few more airtime moments that don't look the strongest, but they'll probably provide some decent full ejector airtime. And then you finally slam into those brakes with a ton of speed. It's a shame that they couldn't use the speed a little more, but they did what they could with the land and existing structure that they were given. And that's what a lot of people don't realize. How good an RMC can be really just depends on the coaster that was there before it. Cedar Point was lucky with how colossal Mean Streak was, whereas Six Flags Over Georgia didn't have a ton to work with Cyclone. Also, moving back to Iron Gwazi, you might have noticed that there aren't any mid-course breaks anywhere in the ride, so you don't have to worry about your train being slowed or brought to a stop halfway through the ride or anything. But that also means I will likely only run 2 trains, so there are trade-offs. Just something I thought I should mention. Overall, Iron Gwazi's layout is one of the most balanced in terms of forces and is one of the most unique layouts we've seen on any coaster. But the layout isn't the only thing about Iron Gwazi I should discuss if I'm to give my full thoughts. The presentation and appearance are also important given that I know I've probably said it 10 times by now, but it is right at the front of the park. But unlike Gwazi, I think Iron Gwazi is the perfect coaster to have right there. It has one of the best color schemes, at least in my opinion, that you can find on any coaster. I know that color choices are subjective, but I feel like any coaster that this pinkish purple is used on, it works. Mystic at Wallaby Road and Alps and DC Rivals at Warner Bros. Movie World are some of the coolest looking coasters in terms of appearance in my opinion. I also think that's really complemented by that fresh wood color, but unfortunately that will only be temporary as wood becomes darker as it rots. You can just look at the difference between the old structure and new structure to see that, but hey, we can still enjoy it for the time being. At this point, it's still unclear how they are going to landscape the grounds around the ride, but I'm confident that it won't just be a bunch of dirt ground like the original Gwazi had. The park with Montu, Kumba, and Cheetah Hunt won't have their signature rides surrounded by a bunch of dirt. I don't think that there will be any on-ride theming, but landscaping will definitely be coming. When it's all said and done, this thing is going to make a spectacular centerpiece as the tallest coaster in the park. And for guests that haven't seen Iron Gwazi yet, but remember the old Gwazi, it's going to be unreal. The 2 rides are practically unrecognizable from each other. Like I said before, I don't think that we'll be seeing a ton of theming, but it'll probably have some sort of jungle landscape keyline. Of course, the name of the coaster is Gwazi, which is an old fabled creature with the head of a tiger and the body of a lion. But what Busch Gardens decided to do with the RMC version was change the theme to a crocodile. That's all well and good, and I think that would be a great theme, but for some reason they kept the Gwazi name. Very odd decision, but I don't think it really matters because I don't think that you'd be able to find very many non-coaster enthusiasts that know what a Gwazi is. They were able to integrate that crocodile theme into the train, as I'm sure many of you have probably seen, and I'm just gonna say it. That is the sexiest train I've ever seen. Just all those geometric shapes and popping colors combined to make a Minecraft crocodile. Absolutely incredible. These are of course the controversial RMC trains that have the comfortable lap bar, but then those dreaded shin guards. I personally have no issue with the RMC shin guards, but I know that some people hate them with a burning passion, so it's something I should note. The trains as you see will not be overly padded, but they don't need to be. Just like every other RMC iBox, I'm confident that Iron Gwazi will be glass smooth. Yet another reason why both the GP and enthusiasts alike will come back again and again to Busch Gardens Tampa for Iron Gwazi. In my opinion at least, the trains are close to perfect, just like almost every other aspect of the ride. The only way that I think Iron Gwazi could possibly be improved is by having those airtime hills at the end hit a little bit more, but again, who knows? No one has ridden it yet, so we'll just have to wait and see if it truly lives up to the hype. In the end, I'm predicting that Iron Gwazi will take the world by storm and be not only the best coaster in the park, but the best coaster in Florida, barely edging out Velocicoaster. It will only enhance the war between Busch Gardens Tampa and Islands of Adventure for the title of best park in Florida, and it will put Busch Gardens back on the map for the general public. So that's about going to wrap this video up, and it's time for today's shoutouts. And by the way, I didn't do halftime trivia in this video because I couldn't find a place to put it where it didn't disrupt the flow. But the shoutouts are going to X-Coaster Enthusiast, Coaster Dog, and Mr. Cola Roaster. They all correctly answered the trivia question from a few videos back about who was the lead designer of Max Force, so congrats! Anyways, I hope you all have a great day. Remember to leave your suggestions, thoughts, and video ideas in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys later. See ya.